I've drunk the cup of laughter, no man could tell the pleasures I have known. The stars in the endless sky, if one could count, could come to billions, but as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far. But as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Welcome to the original lessons of Paramhansa Yogananda, an advanced course in practical metaphysics. Today's lesson, lesson number 5, is on the topic of reincarnation. Reincarnation is a big topic, but it has evolved considerably since the days in 1926 when he wrote this lesson. A number of books and documentaries and documented evidence of people remembering past lives has grown exponentially since 1926. Probably at least half the world's population is open to, believes in, the idea of reincarnation. It fulfills far more the aspects of both justice and mercy than the concept of being born out of nothing, armed with all sorts of traits, some good, some not so good, and having one life to lead, come from nothing, go to nothing. It's kind of a strange teaching, actually. And so let's take a look at some of the points that Yogananda makes on the subject of reincarnation, which here I'm speaking to the choir. I don't imagine anybody watching this broadcast would find reincarnation startlingly new. But nonetheless, let's see what he says. He says, reincarnation means that the soul, being superior to the body, survives it and passes to another body for the fulfillment of its destiny and the working out of the effects or traces. He uses the word traces of actions done before. These traces, he says, are lodged in the subtle bodies accompanying the soul in the passage from one body to another. One body simply not enough to learn the lessons that we have. Later on in the thing, he says that where does he say it? Well, anyway, I don't see it. But he basically says that we come from spirit, we enter into, he says the soul begins as a crystal, moves into plants and then animals and achieves the human body. He says it takes about 8 million lives in an animal body to achieve the human body. In other scriptures, not in this lesson, he says that it takes 1 million years of positive, harmonious, balanced, ethical, moral, God-loving, God-fearing years in the human body to become liberated from the prison of the body and from the delusion of the duality of the creation. This is not a condemnation of the creation, but it's a transcendence of the identification with the creation. He gives several Bible quotes in support of an ancient understanding of reincarnation. From my own studies, I know that, or I have learned, I won't say I know, but I have read that at the time of Jesus in his life, there wasn't clarity about even the existence of an afterlife among the Jews of his time. Although when you read the Old Testament prophets, it's kind of a mixed bag. Satan even appears in there, being like Ezekiel and Elijah being caught up in a whirlwind bodily, like Jesus was said to do to ascend into heaven. There's a lot of talk about bodily resurrection in the Old, I won't say a lot, but there are instances of bodily resurrection. So there are hints of an afterlife there, but it would seem to me that in his time, Jesus' time, it simply wasn't clearly stated, nor was it universally accepted, often just not mentioned. But here are some interesting quotes from the Bible. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 12 through 13, Jesus said, as they came down from the Mount of Transfiguration, Mount Tabor, he and 3 of the disciples, Jesus says, "But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not. Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist." So it's interesting that in parentheticals, the disciples understood he spoke of John the Baptist, but he didn't actually name him. But he did say Elias has returned, which if you will go to the very end of the Old Testament, the last few verses of the Old Testament, are a prediction, maybe it's Zechariah, I forget, of the coming, the return of Elias to pave the way for the Messiah. It's pretty clear language. If you have ears to hear, in other words, if you think in terms of reincarnation, it's very plain. In Revelations, in the Revelation of St. John, there is in chapter 3, verse 12, this statement by the risen Christ in that vision. He says, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out." That is to say, he has overcome the need to be in a body and will not be forced to reincarnate again. One of the interesting other quotes about this, it's fascinatingly interesting because so obvious an opportunity for Jesus to comment on reincarnation or deny it, and he does neither. This is an entire chapter in the Gospel of John, chapter 9, and this is verse 2. "Master," he was asked, "who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" So there's the question, who sinned? If he sinned, the blind man, being born blind, he must have sinned in a prior life. So he goes on to say that it's desire for things of the earth that that require that we reincarnate in a human body on earth. Now, do we reincarnate on other planets? Probably, but that's beyond my pay grade right now. And he points out the obvious thing that, I say obvious, but you look at any not extended family, but in former times, generations, people would have 5, 6, 7, 8 children, right? And you look at the differences in those siblings, in their interest, in their appearance, their temperament, and you just sort of wonder. Padma and I like to joke that any intelligent parent who's sensitively aware of their own child, and after all, what parent is not really, would have to believe in reincarnation, because these little buggers, from the point of their birth as little infants and certainly into toddlers, they come armed like a bomb, like a ticking bomb, with all sorts of, they have an agenda. And sure, they pick up obvious things from you. They've been born from your body, so there's a certain amount of DNA and all that kind of stuff. And they're born into your culture, so they presumably will speak your language and been weaned on your food, so they'll probably like some of them, but not all of them. So sure, but when you look at the differences in siblings, or when you look at the rapidly unfolding characteristics of a newborn and a young child, how can you not believe that they've come from before? I've seen a number of instances where, as the child grows, the child functions almost like the parent to the parent, as the parent has some dysfunction or difficulties, and often the child is wiser than the parent. Of course, not in my case with my children. That's a joke. Okay, so this is an interesting paragraph. I'm going to read it. God would be partial if he created a fortunate and an unfortunate person from birth, unless they were so by their own past actions. But here's the interesting part. But people with better opportunity should help those with lesser opportunity. Otherwise, the former develop bad karma, which spiritually degrades them and ultimately will make them also unfortunate in some future life, perhaps. Okay. He also points out something I'd never really thought about before. He said the law of the conservation of energy applies also on these subtler realms. Now, what is the law of conservation of energy? He writes, science has proven that matter is indestructible. Well, I'm not sure I would quite put it that way. I think what the law says is matter may change form. So yeah, you can destroy it, but energy is conserved. Matter and energy kind of change hands, one being the reservoir of the other being the source of the other. And so he says that this principle that matter is neither created nor destroyed, but transformed into energy, also applies on the subtle realms of consciousness. Okay. He decries the concept that in a year of one simple life of maybe 70, 80 years or less, that you would be granted eternal rewards or condemned eternally in hell. It just doesn't make sense. A finite life cannot reap an infinite result. Another interesting statement he makes, I'd never thought about before. He says, in spirit possession, you have two souls possessing one body. Or in the case of multiple personalities, I sometimes wonder if we have multiple souls in that one body. In reincarnation, however, he writes, one soul passes from one to another body in different births. Okay, so now another interesting point he makes. This is sort of fun. He says, in order to discover Oriental natures garbed in Western bodies, and vice versa, one must be able to differentiate between acquired habits in this life versus prenatal habits. Oriental natures, he writes, are mild, spiritual, motherly, devotional, passively gentle, and who love peace. The Occidental natures are stern, material, active, and have fatherly duty consciousness and care-o-nothing spirit. I don't know what care-o-nothing spirit is, but it's obviously masculine and feminine, right? And anybody could see through that. But it is a curious statement for him to make. Yogananda was a big booster fan of the Oriental culture, which was very much prejudiced against in the West, in America where he came, and during his time. And so he was a booster fan of the qualities of the Orient. Nowadays, these qualities are definitely mixed as time goes on and the different souls go from different bodies and places. Swami Kriyananda made the comment once that he who had lived in India in the late 50s and early 60s and met many great saints, most of which were gone within 10 years of that time into the 70s. But he said it's as if Hindu souls are incarnating here in America and coming to ashrams like Ananda and taking up the practice of yoga and meditation. By contrast, it's as if Western souls are being born in India in three-piece suits in order to lift the material, India in material terms. So we're changing. He once stated that someday Boston would become tropical and people there would have dark skins. Well, I can't speak to the tropical part, but there's a lot of dark-skinned people there. So anyway, he had some interesting points to make. He said we should want to reincarnate of free will, like Jesus and the Masters. And what he's really saying is that those few souls who achieve freedom, but who have a desire to come back, sort of like the Buddhist concept of the Bodhisattva, who desire to come back to other people, become, once they're totally liberated, free souls and what is known as an avatar. But in any case, in the beginning, I want to leave you finally with this statement of his, which is at the beginning of the lesson. He says, through appreciation of all good things and by non-attachment, we can be freed from the enforced reincarnation, which is a self-inflicted form of punishment. I want to read that part again. Through appreciation of all good things and by non-attachment. So hang on to that. By appreciation of all good things and by non-attachment, we can free ourselves from the enslavement of reincarnation. Now, on Monday, I think Padma is going to talk about the corollary to reincarnation, which is the law of karma. Reincarnation makes no sense, or let's just say the operative law underneath the reality of reincarnation is the law of karma. And the law of karma is such that it is not correct to say that one's reincarnation is arbitrary, that I might reincarnate as a spider. But I will tell you a charming little story that in India, two sages were walking down a path one day long ago, and one of them saw a beetle crossing the path. And he looked down at the beetle, turned to his fellow sage, and he said, that beetle was once the god Indra, the god of the gods, and now is a beetle. Well, who knows what that really means, but it is sort of a charming story. But it is not, reincarnation is not an arbitrary affair. The law of karma is sometimes mailed and sometimes not mailed or gloved fist. It's very strong and very precise. So as we live, shall we die, and as we die, shall we live again. Okay, great souls, be good bunnies. All right, bye-bye.